Join me in today's show as we take on the challenge of making math engaging. I'll be sharing ideas from remarkable educators to turn those boring equations into something exciting. This is Cool Cat Teacher Talk, where we talk about what matters in the classroom.
Ever wondered how remarkable teaching happens? Find out right now at Cool Cat Teacher Talk with award-winning teacher Vicki Davis. Get insights from top educators, tech tips, and inspiration to elevate your teaching.
Why is making math engaging so important? Math is all around us, from the way we architect our cities to the way we understand the world's economy. This is the first of a multi-part episode on making math engaging. Let's get started. Math is the language of problem solving. Now, as I share some of these statistics, you may hear me use the word numeracy. Numeracy means the ability to understand and work with numbers. If we look at the current workforce, 74% of employees today have low numeracy skills, yet 50% have to use math on the job. I was talking about this statistic with one of our math teachers at school over lunch, and he says, "No, Vicki, that's not right. Math is needed on every job." And certainly he's right. And even if it's not needed on your job, you need it if you're going to take a paycheck home and keep your budget in balance. 1/3 of adults in the U.S. have low math skills, according to the OECD survey of adult skills. But it isn't just the U.S. that has issues. Less than a quarter of the working age population in the UK, 24%, has the numeracy level equivalent to grade 4. Additionally, we all need math. We've got to balance our budgets, plan for the future, calculate our taxes, all of those things. Hey, so all you math teachers out there, thank you. Teaching math is hard. You have my total respect, and you should have everybody's total respect and gratitude. Math requires so much one-on-one intervention, and it can be exhausting. Sometimes your class sizes can be so large, and the statistics are showing many kids are not only not liking math, but are actually afraid of it. Think about the psychological issues you have of kids walking in your classroom. You have a tough job. You need everyone's respect for the artistry that it takes to be a great math teacher and the effort, because once you finish class, you're not done. You're meeting with kids in study hall and after school, because one-on-one help is a big part of math. But to open this show, I need to help all of us realize how important teaching math is to our children's future and to all of our countries as a whole. So I'm going to open today's show with some statistics to help us see what's going on and to help us all see that wherever we are, we can figure out how to do better. Now, I want to make one thing super clear here. If I hear a kid being labeled, okay, that's a bad kid, never say that to me. Their behavior may not be good, but don't label them. I don't like it when people say, "I'm bad at math," or "I'm bad at computer," or "I'm bad at English or writing or Spanish," or whatever. It makes me get angry. We have behaviors that can be changed. And if somebody's doing it right, we can learn and we can do it better. But you know what? I won't put up with teachers being labeled either, especially by other teachers. Okay, that drives me crazy. They're a bad teacher, or this is a bad teacher. Well, usually people's opinion of teachers is flavored by their child's experience in that class. And we need to support other teachers, and teachers can learn. And I'll tell you, I'm really glad that I'm not judged, hopefully, by how I taught in the early years of my teaching career. I had a student who I taught my first year of teaching, and she went into college, and they were watching Cool Cat Teacher videos and stuff on Edutopia. And she's like, "Oh, I told him that was my teacher." And I said, "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I did so much wrong. I hope you don't talk about what I did, because I made a lot of mistakes in those early years, and I still make mistakes." There's so much I had to learn. And after the pandemic, when I came back, I had to do everything different. And during the pandemic, I had to do everything different. And, how do you help a kid with a computer when you can't get within 6 feet of them? And now there's a whole different set of issues. So I'm always having to learn new things. But I'll say this, once all our kids went home during the pandemic and PhotoMath became the number one app in the app store, in some ways, every single math teacher's career on this planet started over at zero. And there's a whole new set of skills that need to be talked about and be learned. So you might have been in this for 30 years. And hopefully, some of the things you hear from these researchers and educators will be something you can try out. I always talk about innovating like a turtle. We're always trying to try something new. My teachers always talk about how they're turtling. So let's talk about a few of those statistics. When I read the report from the ACT in 2023 stating that GPAs had risen in math, but that math scores were going down, the ACT said schools are inflating grades across the country. So it sounded like something that was kind of intentional. So when I heard this on the radio, I yelled at my radio and I said, don't you know it's because they're using PhotoMath and they're acing their homework and they don't know how to do the work on the test because they're just copying the answers. Okay, every time I talk about this with students, they nod their heads and they go, I don't know what to do. I'm so lost. And so I just use PhotoMath to help me on my homework, but I'm afraid to ask for help. So I'm going to come back to some advice for parents about what do you do when my child is struggling. But one of my favorite authors is Henry Cloud, and he says, blame is the parking brake to improvement. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Blame, B-L-A-M-E, blame is the parking brake to improvement. So we need to be careful not to yell at the radio or video, parents not blaming teachers, teachers not blaming parents, but all realizing there are things that we can do to work together. It is no surprise that math scores are declining in many places. In December 2024, the New York Times ran an article stating that since the pandemic, U.S. math scores have dropped to levels from 1995, and they called these declines sharp and significant. But what are the problems? Let's talk about a couple of them. First, a lot of students aren't interested in math. A survey of 90,000 students conducted by U-Truth in 2024 found that only 57% of high school students consider it important to learn math. There was a little interesting tidbit about those 57% of those students. Those students valued a good relationship with their teachers and had teachers who recognized that math is a social process. Okay, I want you to hear that. They recognize that math is a social process. They are interacting with their teachers. They have to connect with their teachers, and their teachers have to connect with them because learning math is a social process, really like any learning, but especially in math. In that same survey, only 47% of students found their math assignments interesting. So second, lack of interest is a big hurdle. And sometimes traditional teaching methods can focus on these theoretical concepts, theorems and proofs, which are important. I'm not going to say they're not, but they may not resonate with today's students who crave real-world applications. I remember thinking, why am I going to prove something that's already been proved or disproven? How does this make any sense? But this disconnect can lead to a sense of boredom and disengagement. And so it can make math seem more like a chore rather than an exciting exploration of the unknown. Third, some teaching methods need to change that can make math seem inaccessible and leave students feeling defeated and disconnected. And this is particularly true for our struggling students. We've all seen it. The strugglers sit at the back of the classroom. They disengage. Sometimes they try to go to sleep. Sometimes they stop trying. I've seen it. And as we know, math is something you have to work towards. You have to be engaged. Nobody can make some things easy. There's a certain amount of productive struggle required to learn math. So is there a way to help our children be more interested? Absolutely. Jo Baylor from Stanford University, she's a professor of mathematics education, says that the highest achieving kids in the world are the ones who see math as a big web of interconnected ideas. And the lowest achieving students in the world are the kids who take a memorization approach to math. And she said in the United States, you won't be surprised to hear, has more memorizers than any country in the world. So we have to help our children change their views of math. And we need to change how we teach it and talk about it in some ways. And parents, while I'll talk about this at the end of the show, don't go say I was bad at math, so you're bad at math too. Are you really going to hand that down to your kids? Do you want them to have money? Do you want them to be able to balance their checkbook? Do you want them to be successful? We all need math. You don't have to like it to do well at it, but hopefully we can get you excited about it. So as you listen to today's show, look for how remarkable math educators build relationships with their students, how they make math apply to their everyday lives of kids in their classes. Look at how they open up class with real-world applications and what the researchers say about it. Also, they focus on how students feel about math. And you know what? It isn't surprising that many students dread math. A 2015 study found that 88% of students selected math as the subject they hated the most. 63% found it boring, and that 58% of students were afraid of it. If a student is afraid in my class, I have to help them emotionally engage before they can mentally engage with what I'm teaching. We have to help students connect with the purpose of math beyond education and help students appreciate its beauty and the real world power of math. I even use math on this show as I'm editing videos and posting to YouTube and editing for my podcast. Math is used all over the place. And when students are struggling, they need to feel comfortable asking for help. Back in that Youth Truth study I quoted earlier, only 46% said they felt comfortable asking questions in math class. So often in my class, I'll have kids who struggle, and I ask them if they want help. I know they're struggling. And what do they say? Miss Davis, I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't need any help. I'm fine. I know they're struggling, and they say I'm fine. And then I get an email from their wonderful parents, and I do teach kids who have great parents. I don't view those emails as a negative. I view it as an opportunity. And they'll say, my child says they can't do it and you won't help them. Okay, don't shut down teachers. Happens to all of us. Or I asked and it didn't help them. Well, sometimes kids are just struggling so much that, oh, hey, if I can pit mom and dad and against my teacher and vice versa, then they won't work together and figure out that I really need help learning this. But when parents partner with me and I partner with them and we think the best of each other, I once heard it said that a teacher told a parent, don't believe everything your student says about me, and I'll choose not to believe everything they say about you. And there's a lot of truth to that, because sometimes kids will say whoppers about parents, and you're like, I just don't know that that's true. I mean, I guess it could be, but I'm still going to think the best of my parents. So we uncover as teacher and parents working together that the child, for whatever reason, does not want to engage with learning in class. Usually, if they'll set an appointment after school or study hall, an extra session or two will help us break through so we can make progress and move forward. The very few times a student has earned an F in my class, and they earn grades, I don't give grades, I don't give an F. They really did earn it. And I couldn't get them to come in, and they, and it was a struggle with the parents. For some reason, the parent won't even check an email, but you do have to work together, and we need to communicate to help children get the answers they need. We could blame teaching methods that need to change. We can blame lack of personal connection. We can blame an emphasis on memorization. We can blame photomath for all these problems that cause math anxiety and fear. But the good news is that we're all working together, and that despite these challenges, there are a lot of things happening in research And there are educators who are tirelessly working to revamp the way that math is taught in their classroom to make it more engaging, interactive, and fun. And yes, math can be fun. When we take the ideas that we share in today's show and in the other two shows I'm going to create, yes, as I've done these interviews, there's so many big, huge, revolutionary, exciting things that some of you math teachers will go, oh, that's not revolutionary. That's been great teaching all along. And yeah, it is. But sometimes we just need to hear it in a different way from a different person. But there's so many big truth moments in these interviews that can make math engaging and exciting that I'm going to do 3 shows on making math engaging and exciting. And we're going to do that with some of the top researchers and teachers. So this show is background, it's research, but don't worry, the researchers are in a classroom. So it's still very practical. Going to give you some free resources and that sort of thing. We're going to dive into project-based learning and mastery-based learning and a lot of these things people are talking about that are really transforming classrooms. There are so many voices out there that are talking in math education. If you're a math teacher, don't be an island. Get out there and connect with these educators and the many, many more who are doing exciting things to make math exciting. And my hope is, as you listen to these math experts and practitioners, you will start seeing patterns emerge like I did. It's jaw-dropping. Patterns of what it means to be a great teacher artist who teaches math and makes a difference in the children every day. Math is important. It changes lives for the good. So first, we're going to start off by talking about the math research on what works in the classroom with Dr. Erin Krupa. Today, I'm so excited to be talking to Erin Krupa. She's an associate professor of mathematics education in the Department of STEM Education at North Carolina State University. Her research focuses on improving the quality of mathematics teaching and learning through innovative curricular materials and professional development. Thanks for coming on the show today, Erin.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So we want to talk about bridging the research from research to classroom practice. And I know that you've done a lot of work with the TPACK framework, which is sort of, technology in the classroom. Could you kind of give us an overview as educators in the classroom of how that can be helpful for math teachers?
Yeah, TPACK can be helpful because in this new digital age, you want to try to incorporate technology for learning math. And that requires pedagogy for teachers. It requires their content knowledge of math. And then you want to have good technology-driven tasks to really drive kids to engage in learning math.
So there's a lot we can do with formative assessment. A lot of tools are out there, but I've got to get your opinion on artificial intelligence. Some people are saying, hey, this can replace the math teacher. What's your opinion?
I think it's still to be determined, but I kind of have this philosophy. I've done a lot of research on what happens when you put kids in computer labs and you take the teacher away and they're on the system learning math. And my thing is, if students haven't been successful in a traditional classroom, then you're going to put them in front of this machine and strip it all down to procedures. It's not going to be fun or engaging. And there's little connections to the real world, the things that make math really important. So I'm leery. I imagine it could be done in creative ways, but taking the teacher out of learning is a hard idea for me to understand in this moment. Teachers are so important.
Yes, teachers we're artists, and these things are just tools. It's kind of like saying I've invented this new hammer and it's going to make a house without the carpenter. It just absolutely makes no sense to me that you could just turn a kid loose with AI or anything else without that teacher involved. So you talk a lot about mathematical identity. How do we help students recognize themselves as math being part of who we are?
I think we have to bring in students' lived experiences into the classroom so they can connect their world around them to the math that they're learning. That helps their identity. I think when we listen to students, students get so excited to share their ideas. When we ask them to share their strategies, that gets them excited. But it's really bringing their context in and the things that they're interested in to get them excited about math.
So what do you think the biggest mistake that math teachers make as it relates to pulling in that mathematical identity?
Well, I love math teachers, so it's hard to identify mistakes, but I think it's hard
Well,
when
let's
you
say
have
areas for improvement. Low-hanging fruit. How about we say that? Because we do love math teachers.
Yeah. I think it's hard when you have 30 kids to personally identify with each of them. So the hard part is you're trying to do it and there's 30 different individuals. So they're not all into the same thing. So you try your best. Maybe one week you do something around fashion design and the next week you do something around music and the next week you build things. So I think it can't happen for all kids all of the time. That's probably not feasible, but picking and choosing ideas each day to connect to different segments of your population can be important.
Wow. So just really making it relevant to the real world and connecting it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Because otherwise, I mean, even back to your AI question, you strip it down to procedures. And then what's the point? Like, why are we doing this and for what purpose? Why does it even matter?
And isn't that what math students say all the time?
Yes, exactly. When am I ever going to use this again? So if you start with the real world applications, it can be a lot more meaningful for kids.
So when you're teaching math and a kid looks to you and says, when am I ever going to use this again? Like, how do you start with that answer? Because this is a question math teachers are like, okay, where do I even start? It comes out of the blue all the time.
Yeah. I mean, the harder answer is you start with an engaging task that builds that context in. So they're seeing it from the beginning. But that's a big transition, I think, for the educational system. And for curriculum developers to actually create the tasks where that math is visible from the beginning and then they see it. Oh, I'm going to use this in, building design, or I'm going to use this in mechanics, or this is what a repair person has to think about when they're doing ratios for fitting metal into pipes.
Okay, so I want to kind of come back around to technology. Some math teachers say, hey, just me, the board, the book, the paper, the pen, convince me that I even need technology. What are your thoughts of some ways that math teachers can start using technology to reach every child?
So I think technology is important for the learning of math. A calculator can do computations, but innovative technology helps you actually develop the ideas and learn and then remember them and retain them. So Desmos is a really cool algebra tool that you can slide things around and see how it changes the graph so you can develop your ideas about what happens to an equation when you have different variables through the tool. My personal favorite is Geometer Sketchpad. It's a geometry tool, but that helps students come up with their own conjectures. So they move points around in the plane, see what's happening to figures, and then they come up with conjectures that they can then prove. So I think technology is important as a tool for students to construct their own understanding of math instead of a tool that just does math.
So it's really about making math hands-on, because I'll tell you, as much as I loved algebra and I took calculus at Georgia Tech and it got to advanced math, geometry was the hardest for me because I could never just picture what was going on in my head. So what you're saying is it's almost like hands-on, even though it's in technology.
Yeah, it's a tool for you to visualize it so you can see it. The same as if you took a box and rotated it, you could take a figure and rotate it and see what's happening with the calculus. This could be a lame connection to computer science, but it could be like the ways in which Scratch helps you program early on, where you get to see things in real time in a way that you don't necessarily when you do C++ as a kid. It's just a scaffold to help you learn the conceptual things you need to then go program later.
Well, and relating to computer science, 3D design is such an important area as augmented reality, virtual reality starts moving into professional development, starts moving into everything. The need for people who can design in 3D is tremendous. And so having that link with geometry is so important. I was teaching um, Python yesterday to my ninth graders, and we were talking about X and Y coordinates, and they're like, yeah, you mean I'm using that in programming? I'm like, yeah, you need it, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's really important.
Okay, so we as educators have to constantly be learning. And, some will say, well, math has always been math, right? But what are some of the best professional development ways for math teachers to just get excited and be around other math teachers and really reconnect their passion for teaching math?
Yeah. We have a really strong national organization, the National Council for Teachers of Mathematics. And most of the professional development that they put on is really high quality. Um, I mean, it is true that math is math, but the ways you engage kids in math is what's evolving and changing over time. So trying to get professional development on those interesting tasks that engage kids in math or have new applications to math or include new technology innovations in the learning of math. That's really the key. So you're evolving in the ways that you present the math. The math is largely still the same, but it's flipping the script on what instruction looks like and leading with tasks and not lecture.
So, Erin, you're obviously a curious person. Your curriculum vitae, when I was preparing, is just pages and pages of long. But what is the research you're really excited about now? And I know there are things you can't talk about, but I'm just talking about the questions of curiosity that are in your mind of like, okay, what's next for math? Like, where are we heading?
Yeah. So I get really interested in how do we engage kids in math so that it's fun and that they learn. So I like to design curriculum materials and then test them out with kids and teachers. And through that, you can't just hand teachers stuff and say, hey, go do this, right? You have to train them through professional development so that they feel confident when they go to do that. So I get really interested in both the teacher's perspective on how they interact and feel with new materials, and then also how kids' beliefs and attitudes and content knowledge change as they engage in materials.
So describe an exciting lesson that you're like, these kids are having fun learning this really hard subject.
Yeah. So I'm part of this design and pitch challenges and STEM team where we kind of fuse entrepreneurship and math. So I call it Shark Tank for Math. And kids go through this design challenge in teams and they confront math in a real world context and come up with a solution and then pitch it to a panel of judges. So we've had a lot of fun watching kids pitch their products and learn math as they're doing these design challenges.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now I do a Shark Tank with an app. Can you give me an example of a design challenge type product so we can understand it?
Yeah. So we've developed 9 for middle school and 9 for high school. One of my favorites is called Flashy Fashion. So there's this really cool LED light technology you can build into clothing. And we have this challenge champion who's done this and done deep sea dives underwater and light up these beautiful dresses. But the idea is this technology could be built into bike vests to make bike safety easier, or built into spacecraft suits to help with a certain need. So students come up with their own use case. It could be that you're at a game and you want to change the number of your jersey if someone scores a big goal, right? So students take this idea of building lights into clothing and they come up with their own product. But along the way, they have to handle geometric transformation so that they can program the lights to change. So they're tackling some geometry standards related to transformations.
And it sounds like a few programming standards, maybe a little bit of computer science.
Yeah. They're not required to do the programming part. They could just prototype on paper or in one of the dynamic geometry software tools that we utilize. So that can help them see it if they don't know how to program. We're lucky that we got sponsorship through the National Science Foundation to create.
Wow. So what about a teacher who says, oh, that sounds really hard, Erin? What do you think?
I think that if people didn't want to tackle hard things, they probably wouldn't have gone into teaching. And
or teaching math.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We do have a teacher resource hub where we have lesson plan guides for each of the 18 challenges and then big overview guides also. So we try to support teachers, and we always say, hey, if you need even more help, reach out. We'll be happy to have a conversation.
So, Erin, travel back in time to Erin Krupa, beginning of your journey of researching math. What would you say to her?
Don't stop, and you can do it. A lot of society says that girls shouldn't really be in math. So that had to be debunked early. And there was a lot of perseverance through those stages. I was lucky. I remember my freshman year in high school, I used this textbook called Discovering Geometry. It was a book like nothing I'd ever seen. And we literally built the math up in groups. So we were working in groups and we had to come up with our own conjectures. And I think that's what sparked my curiosity and wonder for how you create materials to engage kids so that they're active participants in their learning.
I love that you said that because I work in a computer science field and I almost didn't go to Georgia Tech because so many people in my class said girls don't go to Georgia Tech, girls don't like computers. Of course, this was a long time ago. But even now, I think there is a little bit of that. How can we help more girls and more women understand that our minds are so limitless? We have the capability to go into any field where our passion ignites.
Yeah, I think that's a fundamental question that we're going to have to figure out because girls are very intelligent in math and STEM fields, and we have to make them spaces that they want to enter and be successful in. I think if you figure that out, you'll have a mainstream TV show daily.
Yeah,
and all the money.
So, Erin, as we finish up, would you give a pep talk to math teachers everywhere who are listening to you that just need encouragement? Because, teaching is hard. It's not easy.
Yeah. I think it's the most valuable job in the world, though. You're inspiring young minds. And I think when we pay attention to those minds and get them excited and engaged, and it rejuvenates us as teachers to see our kids excited. So just thinking about what can I do today to honor how my kids are thinking and make it exciting for them.
Oh, and I love the thing that's kind of the thread that's been woven through this is making math relevant. And it sounds like from the moment the bell rings, started with relevance. Is that kind of like your mission?
Yeah. I mean, I think society kind of tells us that math is supposed to be boring. And who wants to go to a class that's boring, right? Like, what are we going to do as a field of teachers that makes it relevant and exciting?
Dr. Erin Krupa, thank you for sharing just a little bit of some of your passion for math and some of these resources so that our math teachers can get going. Erin is a fantastic resource to really dig into relating the research with the classroom. And Erin, I just want to say how much I love it when researchers are actually working with kids. It makes all the difference in the world. So thanks for sharing your story. The episode with Dr. Krupa will be released on a future episode of the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. So subscribe to that podcast. You're listening to Cool Cat Teacher Talk. And today we're talking about the math classroom as first of a 3-part series on math. Erin had so many important points, but one of them was to start class with an activity to make math relevant. She also gave us some information on some free resources that we can download to bring projects to the math classroom. If you want all of these links in show notes, you can go to coolcatteacher.com/talk math. We're going to move forward towards making math accessible to all students and breaking down those barriers with Dr. Lidia Gonzalez. I'm so excited about talking to Dr. Lidia Gonzalez today because so many issues happen with understanding how we can reach every single student with math. She is the author of Bad at Math, Dismantling Harmful Beliefs That Hinder Equitable Mathematics Education, published by Corwin Press. So, Lydia, that's a great title. Why did you write the book?
Basically, it really troubles me that a lot of people are so comfortable saying that they're bad at math. And we're talking people across all different fields, people with all different levels of education will just kind of openly admit that they're not good at math. But you would be ashamed to say you don't know how to read. And so it kind of doesn't sit well with me that so many people are so comfortable saying this. And I think that the fact that our society accepts this is one of the reasons why it's sort of difficult to get everyone on board and to make it so that the majority of students excel at it. Because there's like this way out, right? It's okay to not be good at it.
Right. I know I teach technology, and if I ever have a student who says technology doesn't like me, I have to deal with that belief before I can teach that student, because they're excusing and they don't have a growth mindset. They have a fixed mindset. This is how I am. This is how I always will be. So what are some of the harmful things that we have to dismantle, those harmful beliefs, besides just saying I'm bad at math?
So yeah, that it's socially acceptable to say one is bad at math is definitely one thing we have to work on. But also even just how we define math. A lot of people, when they think about math, they think about numbers and equations, and that's sort of a very narrow definition. If we think about math as sort of like the study of patterns, then a lot of what we do in our everyday life falls into math, right? So you're picking out stuff at the grocery store and putting them in the cart so they all fit, and that's actually a math problem, right? Like bin packing, getting stuff to fit in the cart. But you might not think that that's math. So you might look at yourself and say, well, I'm not very good at this. I don't really like it, because you're not looking at this in a broad way where most everything you do every day revolves around math.
And I'll tell my students when they say that, well, do you want to have money? And do you want to be good at money? And they'll say, well, yeah. Well, it's like, well, you need math so that you can manage your money and take care of your family. And that's just part of life, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I would challenge people to find things that they do in their everyday life that doesn't involve some kind of math. And I think that would be hard to do.
So
but only if we have this broad view of what math is.
So is that what a teacher or an administrator does when they hear a student say, I'm bad at math, or a parent say in a conference, well, I'm bad at math too. When they say that, what should we do? You said apply, get some real world examples, but what's the most productive way to do that? That's not a shaming response, but an encouraging one.
You were saying about having a growth mindset. I think that the word that really helps is yet. So just to look at it as, you know what, you might not be very good at math yet, but that doesn't mean that you can't be successful going forward. And then find tasks and activities where that student is successful, and keep reminding them that way. You just did some math there and you were really good at it. Because most students are certainly capable of doing the work. It's just that the mindset sometimes gets in the way. And with parents too, I would get that all the time as a high school teacher, a high school math teacher. I wasn't very good at it either.
And then
but to say, well, but I think your student could be great at it. It's just a matter of working at it and finding ways we can, support the student and things of that nature. But that little word "yet," I think, goes a long way.
Well, not yet. And that's great with a growth mindset for anything. Are there any other harmful beliefs that we need to address?
Sure. Some people think that math is like neutral, and that teaching math, you don't really have to pay attention to student identities, for example, that this is just a neutral subject that I teach devoid of anything. But if we really want to engage students, then building on their histories and their experiences is important. And it's important in math just as it's important in other subjects as well. So that's another thing that we can work at, finding ways to connect the math to the students in your class.
So Lydia, if you could travel back in time and talk to Lydia, the first year math teacher.
Oh, wow.
And travel back and sort of coach yourself. Think of a situation that you dealt with and how you would tell yourself, knowing what you know now, how to deal with that situation.
I think that my experiences going through school were sometimes very different from my students, and I didn't quite get that. And so I didn't always know where they were coming from or why they might look at a problem a certain way or why they might be acting a certain way in class. Like a student would have their head down and I would knock on their desk and be like, hey, wake up, what's going on? Because in my mind, well, you must not care about class if you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But I never stopped to like ask why. And then one day there was a student with his head down and I had no idea why that day. I said, what's going on? Why is your head down? And he explained that, I believe his uncle had been arrested and he was watching his nephews up till like 3 a.m. And the fact that he made it to school the next day was a really big deal. And I didn't like stop and ask those questions before. So I think that if I went back in time, I would say the math is really important, but building relationships and knowing where your students are coming from, that matters a great deal.
Oh, see, that just touches my heart because we have to relate to educate. And I remember the first time I did that. It may not have even been my first year. I think it was maybe my second or even early in my third. And I had a student who was just acting out in a way that they never had before. And, I used to just deal with the behavior, but I actually took the student out of the room and I said, what's going on? And she said, my parents told me they're getting a divorce this morning. And you're like, it's just, there's some things that are just going on in their lives and we don't have a transparency to see that. And that's just such a powerful story, Lidia.
Thank you. I mean, there was also, I taught during a time where there was a transit strike in New York, and very few students made it to school during those days. I mean, it was impossible, right? There was no public transportation. A lot of our students lived quite a distance. But what was really nice is that we all had lunch together because it was such a small number of students and faculty that were there. And I had a group of students there, and I had, where do you live? How did you make it here? They lived on 100 and something street, and our school was on 16th, and they walked.
Oh,
And I was like, we're not giving these students enough credit. Like, this is amazing that you walked all the way to school so you wouldn't miss it. On the day where it was very easy for you not to because there was no easy way of getting here.
So do you remember what those breakthrough relationships did for their learning of math?
I think that if your teacher believes in you or not. And so I think that once you establish some sort of connection, that makes it a lot easier for the student to learn the math, to come to you if they have questions, to be honest about what they do and do not get, and to like give it a good go at it. So yeah, I think that's essential.
And a student's not always going to be transparent with us, but if we can always remember that there's a reason that they do what they do, not that we're going to excuse inappropriate behavior, but if we can relate to them as a human being and know that, hey, there's more here than they may be telling me, then that will help teach difficult subjects because they know that you care.
Yeah. And you don't always know what's going on. So whatever the first thought is that this must be because of this, probably 5 other reasons that it could be. And if we don't stop to think about it, we might, alienate students that really could benefit from someone just sitting down and talking to them.
So your passion is math, but you're talking relationship here.
I think so. I didn't know that's where we would go today. But if you don't have a good relationship with your students, then it doesn't matter how much math you're trying to get across, that probably won't work.
Wow. So as we finish up, dismantling the harmful beliefs that hinder equitable mathematics education. You said math is not neutral. And so just tell me a little bit, what do you mean and how can math and all teachers understand that better?
I think there's a couple of things to do with that. One is who has access to high quality, rigorous math instruction. So issues of access make it non-neutral, but also the content we teach. So every civilization that we know about has had some sort of math, even if our numeration system, let's go with that, even if it was something as simple as 1, 2, many, a lot. But when we went through school, we probably only learned about the Roman numerals. So why did we only learn about the Roman numerals? Why didn't we learn about the Egyptian numeration system or the Mayan numeration system or the Babylonian numeration system, right? So even what we teach and who we attribute it to, like we teach Pascal's triangle and we call it Pascal's triangle, but other civilizations knew about it way before that, and they're not necessarily getting the credit for it.
Oh,
So
interesting.
there's issues of like what we teach, who is featured in the textbooks, right? How many people can name like a female mathematician or can name a mathematician of color? And then also who has access to the type of rigorous math that, will benefit them going forward.
So get the book. Dr. Gonzalez, author of Bad at Math, Dismantling Harmful Beliefs That Hinder Equitable Mathematics Education. Thank you, Lidia, for coming on the show and for your passion for kids and for excellent teaching of math. Dr. Gonzalez has so many ideas for how we can help children learn math and make it relatable to each child. You can hear your full show at coolcatteacher.com/E819. You're listening to Cool Cat Teacher Talk, where we talk about what matters in the classroom. And today, we're talking about math. Now, in this episode, I'm working to share with you some of the foundational principles to know about improving math education. But guess what? We are going to be talking about math even more for a few weeks, just like we did with writing. You can see all of these episodes and resources and links at coolcatteacher.com/talk math. I'll post all the episodes and all the resources at that one link. But now I'd like to give a message to all of us. I want to say something super clear here. If your child or students are acing homework and failing tests, it points to a problem. If parents are frustrated because they feel like teachers aren't teaching math, I hear that all the time, and parents don't know how to do the math, but teachers are frustrated because the kid comes in with a perfect homework every day with no erases, no erasure marks, no evidence of struggle. The child never asks a question in class or says they need help. They never ask for help. And then they fail tests. The teacher feels like they never got a chance to help the child. It's like, how do I help them if they don't admit they're struggling? This is one reason. Personally, I think it's a good idea not to grade homework. Homework is supposed to be practice. And if you're putting a grade on that, how are they willing to turn in something that is going to be a bad grade and admit they don't know how to do something? They're going to go copy those answers no matter what because the stakes are too high. So be careful. And some say, well, I want you to grade homework. It's the only thing I pass in math. I wouldn't pass if it weren't for homework. We've really got to shift this because it's definitely the have and the have-nots. Is it fair for the kid whose parent can afford PhotoMath Pro and the kid who can't? And you're grading homework and some kids are turning in something fake and then you have a genuine 80 here? How is that fair? But we need to take a minute and stop the blame. As adults, we are all responsible for children's education. This is our time in history. This is our watch. This is our place. If our children and our students aren't learning math, it's time to back up and have some real conversations. We have to know that some failure has to happen in order to have success in math. In math, we work problems. And problems are problems. That's how it works. There is a little bit of productive struggle in math. And in order to reach all the kids, we're going to have to try some new stuff. We may have to try 10 new things and 8 of them work. And we're not going to harp on the 2 that didn't. And even more, we might try 10 things and 1 thing may work for 1 student and 3 things may work for a few students and all 10 may work for others. Some kids are just better at math. But we want to reach all the kids, and math teachers need good relationships with students. Parents need to be supportive of the teacher and their child and help children learn to work problems. If the kid uses PhotoMath to check their answers, the point is, where did the child go wrong in the problem? Something I tell my students all the time. It's not about just getting the answer. It's about the process. Do you understand the process of writing? Do you understand the process of solving this problem? Where did you go wrong in the problem? So why not have them work their math problems and circle where they went wrong in the problem and rework it and attach all that new stuff to the front and have the other one so the teacher can actually see where they made mistakes. But we're all in this together, and when people point fingers and get upset, it's almost impossible to change. The blame game isn't a game. The blame game is very serious. It can kill learning and teaching. It can kill the cooperation between parents and teachers that needs to happen to help kids learn math. And don't blame the kids either. You don't go blame a hurting person for their pain. You help them. Again, I quoted Henry Cloud, one of my favorite authors, from his book Integrity, where he said, blame is the parking brake for improvement. It's in human nature for us to blame and externalize. Henry Cloud also says that some people, quote, excuse practically every result in their life and blame something outside themselves for what happens. They do not see themselves as contributor to the result. And when people are blaming something outside themselves for what happens, he says something terrible happens. You can virtually count on it not getting better. So stop the blame game, which is not a game at all. It's like a war. The war of blame will not give us victory in math. We can each do what we can do. If you're a parent, does your child have a quiet place to work math every day? Can they work in the kitchen, away from their phone? And if they use photo math, you be in the driver's seat. Put it on your phone. Make sure they're not just copying the answer. Make sure they're working the problem themselves first, and then you can help them. You can point out, okay, you don't have to know math to say, look at the math and say, okay, you messed up on line 2 or line 3 or line 4. Go back and look right there. You can do that and not know much about math, and you be in the driver's seat of photo math. Make sure that they are working the problem. They're understanding where they made mistakes, and they're not just copying the answer. And are you communicating this to the teacher? Does the teacher know where your child is struggling? Circle. Show them the original work, have them rework it, and say, my child is struggling here, I can't help them. If you don't tell the teacher where the child is struggling, they're not going to know. So today we've talked about research on math instruction, making learning accessible to all students. And we're going to talk in a future show about formative assessment. And we've also talked about how blame doesn't help anybody improve. We have so much more to talk about. I designed this episode to be foundational and to bring us to the principles for creating math engagement. And I do plan it. I think it's going to end up being 2 more episodes, maybe 1, but probably 2. We need to talk about things like flipped classroom, mastery-based learning, getting the brain ready to learn math, and even more tools to help kids learn about math. All the resources and links to this show are at coolcatteacher.com/talkmath. We need to talk about math. We need to talk about all these subjects. It's helpful to bring all of these voices together and listen to the common patterns. Because, yeah, we have a math crisis, but I am not going to sit there and just nod my head at the newspaper when I'm on my break going, yeah, we got a math crisis, and not do my tiny little part to try to give voice to all of the math teachers who are doing a great job. And so many math teachers need encouragement and respect and appreciation. We need to make math relevant again. So educators, let's recap today's Cool Cat Teacher Talk Show about engaging our students in math. So we opened today's show with some eye-opening statistics. 74% of today's employees have low numeracy skills, yet half need math daily in their job. And even that number of half is debatable. But here's the real kicker. This isn't just about calculations. It's about transforming lives through the power of mathematical thinking. Our 2 amazing guests brought wisdom from both research and classroom trenches. Dr. Erin Krupa from North Carolina State shared how math comes alive when we connect it to students' real worlds. Think Shark Tank style projects where kids pick products using geometry and transformations. It's not just math, it's creativity unleashed through real-world application in numbers. Dr. Lidia Gonzalez dropped some amazing truths about dismantling harmful beliefs around math. You know that phrase, "I'm just bad at math"? We're crushing that myth today. She reminded us that math isn't neutral. It's deeply connected to students' identities and real-world experiences. And here's the golden nugget. The magic happens when we build relationships first. Both experts emphasize that before we can teach equations, we need to understand the hearts behind the calculators. One powerful story shared was about a student who seemingly disengaged, but was actually caring for a family until 3 a.m. This is a reminder there's always more to the story than what we see when a student is disengaged. So what's the takeaway for your classroom tomorrow? Start with relevance. Whether it's fashion design or sports statistics, connect math to what lights up your students' eyes from the opening of class. Build those relationships. Create safe spaces where it's okay to struggle with a problem. And remember, every civilization had math, so bring diverse mathematical histories into your teaching. For parents listening, partner with teachers. And the same for us teachers. Partner with parents. If your child is acing homework with bombing tests, something's up. Let's all work together to make math real, relevant, and revolutionary. We can all work to resolve the math crisis in our own small corner of the world. Because here's the thing, there's nothing small about solving this problem. Because when you change the life of one child, you're changing their whole world, their whole future. You are empowering them to know that school is relevant and that they can succeed. This is so important, and it's going to take all of us. And as for me, I want to be part of the solution. And I know that you do too, and that you've gotten some practical strategies for doing that in your world today. So as you finish this show, I want you to think about what's next. What am I going to do today? What am I going to do first thing tomorrow morning to make math more engaging for the students in my world? Remember, educators, you're not just teaching math, you're unlocking potential one equation at a time. Stay tuned for more game-changing strategies in our upcoming episodes of Cool Cat Teacher Talk. If you want to dive deeper into these transformative ideas, catch all the resources at coolcatteacher.com/talkmath. This is Vicki Davis reminding you that behind every number is a story, and every student has the potential to become a mathematical storyteller, telling the story of an improved life and future. So keep calculating those possibilities. Till next time, see you later, educator.
Stay in the loop. Visit coolcatteacher.com.
So thank you for listening to this episode of Cool Cat Teacher Talk, where we talk about what matters in the classroom. This is Vicki Davis, the Cool Cat Teacher.